3. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be covering different scenes and managing your scenes in Unity. Ultimately, when you build out your game, you're going to have different scenes. They could be consistent of your different levels. They could be maybe a main menu, a settings scene, maybe an ending scene or a cut scene. And we need to figure out a way to create those and also keep track of where they are inside of Unity. So here I have our sample scene from last time where we covered some of the basic primitive shapes that Unity has to offer, mainly for prototyping that we can use along the way. And so here's my sample scene. One thing that we're going to do is that we're going to take us back to our project panel, and inside of our assets, we were given a scenes folder with this particular sample scene. This is where we could have and contain all of our different scenes. If you have a small, maybe 2 or 3 scene game, you can probably just have them by themselves. Maybe you would like to create folders for different types of interaction with the player, and you can create those different folders as needed. As far as the organization, that's going to be up to you as far as how you want to go about this. Let's say this is our sample scene here, and I actually wanted to save this, and I was done building, and I said, okay, this is a good level 1 as an example. I can go up to File, I can go down to Save As, and I'm going to want to save this inside this same folder with this sample scene. In the navigation, you're going to want to look for that Assets location and make sure that you've selected the Scenes folder, and then I want to give this a name. And I can go ahead and say I want to call this level number 1, and I want to make sure that I save that as a scene inside my scenes folder. And now I have the two, my sample scene and the new level 1 that I just created, and here is my level 1 as well. One thing that I neglected to mention last time, but it could be beneficial to this with different scenes, are prefab game objects. These are game objects that we want to make an original copy of that we can then clone as needed or bring into different scenes. So I'm going to go to my project folder. I'm going to go to Assets here, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create a new folder called Prefabs. So we do have a prefab here, but I want to create a folder first for this particular prefab. This could be different object that gets spawned into the world, different enemies, different collectibles, any kind of special effects. They could come from a prefabbed object. So what I could do is I could grab my cube. So I have my cube right here. And if I wanted to make this a prefab so that I can use that again in different scenes for different reasons, I can take this object here. So I can double click my prefabs folder, and I'm going to grab the cube, and I'm going to drag the cube into my prefab here. And that way, if this prefab had any components that were originally created from the original, now the prefab has a copy, and I can reuse this prefab as needed. This will come into focus and be very handy later on as we get into scripting and how can we actually use this prefab to generate multiple copies on this particular object. And the difference is that in your hierarchy, you'll notice that this prefab turned into a blue color and no longer a gray color, and that's the difference. These blues represent prefabbed objects, whereas a gray is a standalone object. And so what I could do is, now that I've made a change, I'm going to do a Control or a Command S to save my scene. And let's say I want to make a brand new scene now. So I have my level 1, and I'm ready for a level 2. I can go back to my scenes folder. I can right click. I can go to create, and I can go to scene, and I want to create a brand new scene, and I want to say this one will be, say, level number 2 as an example. And then to open up this scene, I can double click on level 2, and now you notice that here I'm in level number 2 with my brand new scene with no currently game object other than the default ones that come with us, so the main camera and the directional light. And what I could do is take my prefab, and I can grab my cube, I can drag that into the hierarchy, and I can add that prefabbed object into this new scene, and anything that comes along with it will be here in the scene itself. So let's say now I can go ahead and design my level 2 and then add different objects as well. And so now my different scenes are now being generated and saved, and they're housed in my scenes folder. Level 1, level 2, and then our sample scene again. If I want to go back to level number 1, double click, I'm back in level 1. Or if I want to go back to the sample scene again, double click on sample scene, and I have this ready to go. Let's say you are ready to play test, and you need to generate movement from one scene to another. As an example, in order for us to play test as we're managing these scenes, is that I can press the play button, so I can go into play mode, so I can see what's happening in this particular scene. And an example is, what happens if the player needs to collect, say, 3 objects, and that's going to open a portal to take them to the next level. In order for Unity to know and manage the different scenes, Unity has these build settings that we need to make sure that we're accounting for these different scenes. Now, as the projects get built out, we'll cover this again, but for reference, if you go up to File and down to Build Settings, this is where you would ultimately build your game for the different platform that you would like to use it for, whether it's Mac, Windows, Linux, maybe for the web, or maybe for an iOS or Android device. This is where you would then build the game to be publishable to those platforms. But the main thing here is this scenes in the build. So as you're play testing and you're building your levels in your game, and you're checking to make sure that you can go from scene to scene once we get into scripting, your scenes actually need to be here. And currently I have no scenes in my build. So I could add this open scene, which is going to grab the scenes folder and the sample scene. But how do I get the other ones into here as well? I want to make sure level 2 and level 1 are part of this as well. So I can grab level 1, I can drag and drop, and level 2, drag and drop. And now I've got those different scenes which have either a name as a reference or they have an index. The index starts at 0, 1, 2, and so forth. So when you're referencing these different scenes via our C# scripts, we can use the number associated with that scene or the name itself. And I can rearrange these if I need to by clicking, dragging, and dropping them. So level 1 maybe should go first, and then level 2, and then sample scene, or maybe the sample scene is a main menu, and that would be at the very top. And likewise, you could get rid of these, and I can remove them from the build settings as well. And that's how you would go about managing the scenes in the build settings. And then once I'm done, I don't need to press build or build to run to actually make this work. I can just apply those scenes here. I can exit this out, and then I have them ready to go. So there is the introduction to creating new scenes and managing our scenes in Unity. And thanks for watching.